I've been thinking lately about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is on my mind because I'm very hungry. Venmo, Patreon, and Cash App in bio. So if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've probably seen this diagram. And if you've heard about it through many of the viral blog posts that have been circulating in the last decade, you'll know that Maslow stole the hierarchy of needs, pyramid and all, from the Blackfoot Nation, chopped off the part about caring for your community, and published it as his own research. And if you saw my TikTok yesterday, you'll already know that Maslow never even had a pyramid in his hierarchy of needs, which is just one of many ways in which this story is a wild oversimplification. But Maslow did spend time with the Sisika, which is the name of the people Maslow spent time with, their language, and also the land they live on. And he wrote a lot about how what he learned from them dramatically affected the trajectory of his research on human motivation. And that citation never did make it into any of the published papers. But the moral of the Tumblr version of the story is that there's a white supremacist tendency to take nuanced questions involving relationships, societies, and systems, reduce them to the actions and internal lives of individuals, and in doing so lose the part of the conversation that helps us strengthen our communities and sustain the world we live in. So it's kind of a shame that that story also does exactly that thing. The Maslow was an asshole argument buys into the great man theory of history. The idea that things are the way they are because specific important historical figures made big decisions, and everything else doesn't really matter. Because the problem isn't Maslow was a dick, whether or not he was. The problem is that mechanics for publishing ideas in our society strongly encourage the practice of pinning them to a single researcher, and strongly prefer to pin them specifically to white men. And then our mechanics for disseminating psychological insight overwhelmingly frame those insights in terms of how they can be used to extract more value from labor. And those systems strongly prefer attribution when it's attribution to white men. And then the iterations of that system further compress the ideas into neat, punchy diagrams, with no mechanism for routinely re-injecting nuance into the iterations of the work. The problem is that the cultural systems built around the movement of ideas in our society took insights that deserved complex, nuanced discussion and citation, including attribution to the knowledge of native peoples, and at every step of the way pressured everyone involved to compress them into the narrative idea of belonging to a single white man, and compress that specific white man's writings into a neat little diagram. Like, Maslow didn't have a magical opportunity to shape how our culture thought about motivation and blew it by making it about individualism. The culture picked up and ran with what Maslow wrote because it already meshed with the values of that culture. And every time someone stripped away a part that didn't vibe with white supremacist individualism, that version did even better. So if you heard that Tumblr story and your takeaway was, wow, Maslow is a dick, you learned the wrong lesson. Not because Maslow was awesome, but because every set of head and hands that idea passed through over the last 80 years took part in shaping the story, and the society that story inhabits. And every one of those people matters.